Hier ist die neue Folge der Ökonomie-Videos.
All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're asking a question that sounds, well, pretty simple, right? We use money every single day. We work for it, we spend it, but have you ever stopped to think about where it actually comes from? Okay, let's get into it. So when I ask that question, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably that it's printed by the government or maybe the central bank. And, you'd be kind of right. But that is such a tiny piece of a much, much bigger and honestly, more surprising puzzle. And here's why. Because the truth is, most of the money out there, it's not made where you'd expect. And understanding this one fact, well, it completely changes how you look at our entire financial system. Okay, so before we can pull back the curtain on how money is made, we first have to get on the same page about what our money is. It's not like the old days, it's not backed by gold or silver. So what gives it any value at all? The money we all use today is called fiat money. And really, all that means is that it's money because the government says it is. It has no value in and of itself. A 20-euro note is just a piece of paper. We accept it because we have a shared trust that other people will accept it from us. It's a collective belief. The entire system is built on nothing more and nothing less than trust. So let's start with what I'm calling engine number one. This is the one we all kind of know about, the central bank. This is where all the physical cash, the stuff you can actually hold, comes from. And even here, there's a neat little detail. Coins? Those are actually minted directly by the state. The central bank then buys those coins. But the banknotes, the paper money, that's printed by the central bank itself. Put them together, and that's all the physical cash we have. And this is where it gets interesting. There's this thing called seigniorage, which is just a fancy word for the profit the government makes from creating money. Think about it. It costs maybe, 10 cents to make a 1 euro coin? The state sells that coin to the central bank for its full face value and pockets the difference. For a country like Germany, we're talking about a cool 300 million euros a year straight into public funds. But wait, how does that newly printed cash actually get out of the bank vault and into our pockets? Well, the central bank doesn't just, hand it out. Instead, it buys stuff from commercial banks. Think super safe assets like government bonds. In return, the commercial banks get this fresh new money either as actual cash or as a deposit in their own special account at the central bank. But, and this is the big twist, all that physical cash, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The real action, the real money creation happens in engine number 2, the commercial banking system. These are the real money factories. You see, most of the money in our economy isn't something you can hold. It's just numbers in your bank account. The digital stuff. In Germany, they call it Giraldgeld, or book money, which is perfect because it only exists as an entry in a bank's books. This is the stuff that really powers the economy. And just look at the numbers. It's huge. Physical cash is maybe 10% of the total money supply. The other 90%? That's all digital book money. That means for every single euro the central bank creates, commercial banks are creating 4, 5, maybe even 9 times more. So how on earth are they doing? And that question brings us to probably the biggest myth about banking. It's a story we've all heard, and on the surface, it makes total sense. You know the one, right? You put your savings in the bank. The bank then takes your money and lends it to someone who wants to buy a car or a house. The bank is just the middleman, taking your money and passing it on. That's how it works, isn't it? Nope. Absolutely 100% wrong. It's a nice, simple story, but it's not how the system works. Banks are not just passing money around. They are creating it. So let's get this straight. The old textbook idea that your savings lead to loans, it's completely backward. The reality is loans create deposits. When a bank makes a loan, it's not dipping into a vault of other people's savings. It is creating brand new money. So imagine this. You go to the bank for a mortgage. The bank says yes. What happens next? They don't move money from another account. They just type the loan amount into your account. Poof. That digital money, that book money, did not exist a second before. It was created out of thin air by the act of making the loan. Your local bank? It's a money factory. Okay, so the big question now is, if banks can just create money by typing on a keyboard, what's to stop them from just going wild and creating way too much? I mean, that would cause chaos, right? Well, thankfully, there are some pretty important rules to keep these engines in check. The biggest one is something called capital requirements. Basically, for every loan a bank makes, it has to hold some of its own money on the side as a safety cushion. And the riskier the loan, the bigger that cushion needs to be. So a super safe government bond might not need any cushion at all, but a riskier business loan? They have to put up more of their own cash. This is what limits how much money they can create. It's tied directly to how much of their own capital they have. Then there's the fear of a good old-fashioned bank run. What happens if suddenly everyone wants to turn their digital money into physical cash all at once? The bank would collapse. And that's where the central bank comes back in, playing the role of the lender of last resort. It stands ready to pump emergency cash into a healthy bank to stop it from failing. And you know what? The banks kind of police each other. Think about it. All day long, you're transferring money to people at other banks. At the end of the day, all those banks have to settle up with each other. If one bank gets a little too trigger-happy creating loans, it's going to owe the other banks a ton of money. So there's this natural pressure to stay in line with the rest of the system. So when you take a step back and look at all the pieces, the fiat money, the central bank printing cash, the commercial banks creating book money, you start to see that this whole massive complicated machine is really built on one single invisible thing, and that thing is trust. It's a whole chain of it. You and I trust our banks to keep our money safe. The banks have to trust each other to settle up their bills every day. And everybody, all the banks, trust the central bank to be the ultimate safety net. From the cash in your hand to the trillions of digital dollars zipping around the globe, it all works because we believe it will. And that really brings us to the core of it all. Our money isn't really a thing. It's a set of relationships. It's a system built entirely on our collective confidence. Which leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. What happens if that trust ever breaks down?